generation Oregon farm owner. He's a member of the Oregon State Bar, clerked for a judge in the Oregon Court of Appeals. Substantial involvement in real estate in Oregon, over 1,000 transactions, served on the board of the Portland Development Commission, and now he's working with OMSI in real estate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Preston, and I will mute myself.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody here taking the time. Just one quick clarification. Fourth generation farmer from California. I was part of the exodus here to Oregon about 25 years ago to come to college, and it was a better style of life. But I grew up on almond farms, grew up doing farm work, moved here to Oregon to attend law and business school at Willamette. Spent some time at CB Richard Ellis and with my family's debt fund, and very fortunate here to be at OMSI. This is about my 5th month here, and I was hired to spearhead this project that I will talk with you all briefly about. If you don't mind, I would like to share my screen. I have a brief PowerPoint that will accompany what I'm saying here. What I'm here to present is the OMSI District Master Plan, and I'm not sure how familiar the people of the club are with this, but OMSI's been in existence since 1944. Where OMSI currently sits, this is the 3rd location that OMSI has had. This location was previously the first sustainable power plant in the state of Oregon. It was where Portland General Electric first created hydropower for the city of Portland in the late 1800s. OMSI took ownership and stewardship of the building in 1987, has subsequently completed 2 remodels to the district that you see today. Here's a brief picture of it. OMSI serves about 1.2 million visitors a year. About 45% of those visitors are outside of Multnomah and Washington County. So there's broad appeal to OMSI. It's not just a city of Portland, Multnomah County, East County. It's a very broad attraction throughout the state. Some things we're focused here on OMSI on an operational side, outside of the district development, are early childhood education. That's the core of what we do here as an organization, and that will continue and into the future. Climate action. With climate change now, just trying to understand the science behind climate change, understand the science behind weather. Right now we have a great exhibit on snow, and so just giving children, adults the ability to learn, see science in an interactive, engaging atmosphere is what we shoot for there. Center for Innovation. OMSI, like many organizations, can get a little bit stagnant, and we are making a very concerted effort over the next 3 to 5 years to push digital innovation. COVID has really progressed that, but we've seen that we now need to make our offerings digital, make them online, make them in alternate platforms so people can access information without having to come down to the museum and visit. These are some of our recent accomplishments. I'll send this to everybody afterwards. I don't want to spend too much time tooting our own horn here, but we've got a great staff. We serve a whole heck of a lot of kids, and they do a really nice job. And it's all income demographics, all age ranges, all socioeconomic status, cultural diversity. There's a lot going on here at the museum. We just finished the Mandela exhibit, which was a very successful exhibit. And then starting the week before spring break, so next week, we are bringing in a Leonardo da Vinci exhibit. That exhibit will include the exhibits coming from Italy. It'll include folios of his work, as well as some of his writings and books. So we're very excited about that. And this is a little bit a cluster map of who we serve and where we serve people in the Portland metro area, as well as the community programs that we offer, and just a quick overview of where the majority of our membership comes from. I mentioned the 1.2 million visitors. We have about 300,000 membered guests that are annual members. We tend to see about 6 to 12 visits a year from those individuals. So in addition to the 1.2 million people that we're seeing many of those folks over and over again, which is exciting for us. And then why I'm here. You guys have seen OMSI before and you want to know what's new. OMSI currently owns 18 acres that the majority is surface parking lots. OMSI is looking to redevelop that over the next, I'll call it 10 to 20 year period into a mixed use district. That district would include housing, it would include retail, it would include hospitality or hotels, office, and a small industrial component. So a very ambitious plan that we're hoping to transform OMSI and create a future endowment that we can plug into programming. Before I go on, instead of talking at you all for 15, 20 minutes, are there any questions about where OMSI's at now and some of the things we do, the programs we offer, before I get into some of the specifics about the district?
Preston, this is Ron Atwood. At various times over the years, OMSI has had stronger finances and other times it has not had very strong finances and had to be bailed out at one time or another. Where do you sit now currently on the strength of the finances for the organization?
OMSI is in the best fiscal position that they've been in their history. And we are very fortunate. We were able to maintain about 65% of revenue throughout the COVID period that we're still in. And then we were also able to procure PPE loans that were forgiven based on our museum status. OMSI is sitting on a little over 8 figures in cash. We have very little debt and we've got this balance sheet to work with. So financially, we need to plan and be conservative for the future and for bad events, but we're feeling very good about the financial capacity of OMSI right now. And that leads to really with OMSI's money, we're a nonprofit. Our goal is to educate the youth. And so we don't tend to operate at excesses. When we have excess money that's outside within operations, we spend it helping the community. So we have a large balance sheet, but we intend to maintain running our business on either a positive or a neutral revenue basis so that we're not losing money operationally annually.
Preston, this is Tony Lineweber. I had one with all of this acreage, and you said it's mostly parking lots at the current time. How close is either the trolley or public transportation to gain access? If I make an assumption, we're going to be restricting the parking capability there.
Yeah, I'm going to skip ahead and then I will skip back to answer that particular question.
Okay, thank you.
If you can see the map here, if you look in between Opera 1 and Opera 2, that is the new telecom bridge, which incorporates bus and light rail parking. The parking situation is one of the most difficult challenges for this operation. OMSI cannot operate without parking. And so what we have proposed right now is a phased development. That phased development starts with tract A, D, and C, followed by G and H. Tracks E and F would be future parking for OMSI, but that parking would not be built until the rest of the district is developed. So essentially, we've reserved a couple spaces to build above ground parking, but we will utilize our current parking structure until some of the district is built and some other folks can share in the cost of that parking structure. I think These are some of our goals. These are renderings from our architect partners, ZGF. This is not what it looks like today. What we're trying to do today is permit the potential for the site. Every individual site will have to be permitted through the city on its own individual basis. But what we're trying to do is permit essentially what can be there, what will that boundary shape look like, and what's the maximum and minimum sizes of the building envelope. OMSI is in a unique position, having ownership of this land to potentially be able to curate a district. Our district is market driven. We are not in the environment we are in right now. We can't go and build a bunch of office buildings because that's not where we stand right now. So market participants will come with their plans, and then OMSI will adjust to those market participants as to what makes best sense for OMSI and the district as a whole. This next slide is a quick presentation of essentially everything that's going on here. You see 24 acres here, 18 of that is owned by OMSI. PGE, Portland Community College, and Portland Opera are the other owners here, as well as an individual family, but that family's estate is in the process of selling their parcel to OMSI. Some notes here, this is going to be the, if approved, it'll be the first approved housing in the Central East Side. And we're excited about that. We're working with OHSU on some potential partnerships to include senior housing with accessibility to their campus across the river. This will also include a new waterfront education park, improving the area along the waterfront and enhancing safety, lighting, things along that to create a safe space for people to travel. We're working on some innovative things that we hope will come to fruition, but we're not sure. We're working on a concept called the infra centers, where we plan to locate all district utilities, including wastewater, heat and cooling, connectivity, phone lines, internet connections, and traditional power, and all into one site to service the entirety of the district. That'll give us the ability to control power based on output. If we've got an office building next to an apartment building, we can service both buildings with the same amount of power based on their flexible uses and when they're demanding power. So we're trying to look to the future, and we're working with PGE to establish this program. So we're hoping to do something a little innovative with how power is generated and distributed throughout the district. This is a brief slide on the waterfront education park. We are currently working in conjunction with tribal partners, the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians and the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, as well as other Native organizations to design this waterfront park. It was important for OMSI, it was important for the city and for Metro to have Native representation on the river and try to restore at least some cultural significance on the river for the indigenous communities. I showed this briefly earlier, but this is the new plan, and the largest changes here involve what we're calling New Water Avenue. As you can see to the east end of the boundary, there is a new street along the rail line. That is New Water Avenue. The goal of that street is to take fast-moving truck traffic and fast-moving bike traffic off of the interior roads and off of the waterfront cycle track. The waterfront cycle track is quite dangerous right now. We have quite a few walkers, slow bikers, and then bikers traveling as fast as 25 miles an hour. So trying to create a safe environment for people to move and access the district. New Water Avenue also will not have stoplights and will be a faster moving thoroughfare, and that was a concession to the Trucking Council and Central East Side to preserve some of the industrial uses and enhance their capacity and access. In between tracks E and F, there will be what's called a cycle loop, essentially just a loop that's activated by retail spaces that slow moving bike traffics and pedestrians can access the district, and easy access to public transportation. We've been in the media a bunch lately. You might have seen some of this, mostly positive, but this is just some recent mentions. You can read about that at your own leisure, or click into this when I send you the overall slides. This is our project timeline, and then I'd like to give you an idea of where we're headed, what the next, I'll call it 9 to 12 months look like, and then the next 2 to 5 years. This project began in 2008 with a vision with our former chair, Nancy Stuber, and it has taken 14 years to get to a point where we could submit a plan to the city of Portland. Multiple different architects, multiple different engineers that have helped us work through this, and we've finalized what I feel like is a great team that is very supportive around the project. And so we've been moving at a pretty rapid pace since I've arrived here in 2022, none to my doing, mainly to the predecessors before me. But right now we have submitted our master plan to the city. The city has asked us for some verification of items, including surveys of the riverbanks, mainly technical things. We are planning a first land use hearing likely in June or July of 2022, subsequently followed by an expected second land use hearing in September or October in 2022. Once the plan is approved, OMSI will begin to move towards the development of New Water Avenue, which is essential for parcels G and H. And then we will look to the market to determine where the next buildings are going to be built and what those buildings will look like. Some important aspects around the funding, how OMSI has proposed to structure this is somewhat analogous to a three-legged stool, where OMSI would be paying for 1/3 of the costs of development, private development would pay for 1/3, and then a city would pay for 1/3. And that's just for the infrastructure and the parks work. All vertical development going up with buildings will be paid for by OMSI and private development. So right now we are looking for support from stakeholders, people in the community, through a letter writing campaign to our city council members to help support this project. City council has been, it's turned over, and individuals have different bureaus, and support has, OMSI had strong support from the majority of the council in 2020, and right now we've probably got 3 of the 5 members in support of the project. And so beyond funding, we really believe this is a project that is a win for everybody. There's very little opposition to the project. Portland is in dire need for a win and to make some changes within our community that are positive for everybody. And so we view this as an opportunity for the city, OMSI, and stakeholders to create something that will have a lasting future, and we would like to do that now. That's my 15 minutes here, and I just happy to answer any questions. I'll send this information, but we'd like to essentially be an open book where we will share what we have, and happy to answer any questions. And we're also not set on how things are. We know we can adapt things. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and I see Bob with his hand up.
So Preston, one, if you'd stop sharing your screen, that would be helpful. We can all see one another. But my question is, the city tends to have a vision in 20-year increments, and they label it 2020, 2040, and so forth. How does, and I'm quite impressed by your presentation, by the way, how does OMSI's plan fit in with the city's most recent long-term vision for what would be the east waterfront of the Willamette.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I think what you're referring to, or at least how I refer to that, is the 2035 transportation plan that the city has implemented and promulgated. Our plan took that into consideration, and New Water Avenue and these loop roads are in the 2035 transportation plan. The main rub right now is we would like to move now, and the city would like to move 10 to 12 years from now. So what we are proposing is that OMSI and private development will essentially pay for 2/3 of the project if we can move the city's planning timeframe up to meet our timeframe.
Is the city's timeframe based on their funding capacity?
Yes, and it's also based on the direction and the goals and ambitions of the individual bureau directors and the council members. The city is short of money for some of the departments that we really need. I think of SDC funds, for example, which are system development charges that a developer would be eligible to receive either credits or cash from the city. That bucket is essentially non-existent within the city of Portland for 5 to 7 years. So when the city tells us there's no money, it's true to a certain extent, but what we hope for is an allocation of a portion. Right now, the city has proposed their projects in front of the OMSI projects, which is understandable. We're all self-interested at the end of the day, but we're hoping for a partial allocation and a just enhanced visibility and quickening the time frame is what we're asking the city for right now.
Melissa.
Thank you, Preston. This is all so exciting, and I think I might be one of those cyclists that go by OMSI a little bit too quick. So does the New Water Avenue connect up with the spring water that a lot of cyclists are using for training, and because it's going to be a high traffic area, is it still going to be a safe place for cyclists to be going quickly with all the traffic going quickly too?
Yes, thank you, Melissa. That's an excellent question. The New Water Avenue proposed alignment has a 12-foot cycle tracks on each side of the road, which would be the largest cycle tracks in the city of Portland right now. And so safety is a big thing here. We've got 53-foot trucks screaming by, passing bikers. We've got people walking with strollers. There is also connectivity from the Springwater corridor. One area that the connectivity, in my opinion, can use some work is when you're coming to the end of what will be the New Water Avenue, when you're at the PCC Climb building, crossing that area back to the Springwater corridor is something we're working with our engineers right now to essentially improve the plan, because right now it creates too much stop-start for that fast-moving bike traffic.
Wonderful, thank you.
Brandon.
So this may just be my ignorance on how development typically works, but my understanding is if a developer is developing a block or larger piece of property, that they are paying the city to put in utilities and those make the site ready and put that infrastructure in. And now you're asking the city to pay for that. Could you just, one, is that an accurate description of the situation? And two, if it is, why would the city do that here and not for some other development?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Typically the city issues SDC charges, system development charges, which allow a developer to, let's use round numbers, say you've got a $10 million building and that building's going to bring $1 million in future tax revenue to the city. The city has a formula that determines, based on that future tax revenue, as well as permitting fees, how much the city can contribute. And so what we are asking the city for is to use the same metric that they have used for their project at the Broadway corridor and the same metrics that were used at the Zidell project on the south waterfront to determine what our eligibility is. So it's a little bit, we are asking the city for something, but what we're asking the city for is traditionally how development has been done in the past in the city of Portland, with the city of Portland contributing a pretty significant portion to the underlying infrastructure based on the end goal of increased tax revenue for the city.
Dave Miller.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Being just actually working just a couple of blocks from where you are, curious about the houseless, homeless scenario, because I know what it looks like in my backyard.
I walk the neighborhood 2-3 times a week, and then I drive it on the other days that I don't walk. There's the houseless and vagrant issue it's out of control. We have, not just from our visitors' standpoint, but our custodial staff, our security staff, we have daily run-ins with the houseless population. We're part of the solution. We can't be the entirety of the solution. But what we're hoping is that with enhanced development, with additional people in these areas, that there will be additional money available from the OMSI side for security, and also that the activation will deter some of the bad activity that happens. That being said, this is the problem that everybody on this call has to be part of the solution for. There's no good solution for it right now, and the county hasn't proposed anything that really makes sense. The financial feasibility is very, very difficult. And I think the community at large is going to have to do something to work together outside of city government to change this. I just don't see government taking care of this problem.
Okay, another question or two. Ron Atwood and then Tony.
I wasn't aware that the Portland Opera had facilities down there. Are they part of this overall plan? And I mean, what is their role and participation in this?
Yeah, Portland Opera joined the plan in, I believe it was late 2019. They currently have one opera building. They would like to potentially build another building for their own use back behind that. Opera is part of the planning. They're part of our essentially project team. However, their development timeline for their additional building is probably 7 to 10 years away. They haven't begun their capital campaign for that. So the opera, it will most likely continue to operate in its current capacity and structure until they can raise the funds to continue to develop their excess parcel.
Is that for storage and building stages and those kinds of things?
A little bit. There's also a pretty broad education component that they're trying to bring in. And I feel like there's also like chambers, like practice chambers for operas as well.
Thank you.
Tony, last question.
I noted in the presentation a reference to a tribal center. Could you please explain what that is envisioned to be?
Yeah, somewhat. With the Center for Tribal Nations is a potential building that is proposed by a broad group of indigenous communities. Their goal is to have a meeting gathering space that would allow them to perform ceremonies, have classroom space, potentially office space. The Center for Tribal Nations is how it's currently proposed is that if they can procure funding and a good plan that fits within the OMSI district, OMSI will try very hard to make it work on one of their parcels of land. And I can send you some additional information about this, but it's been very important that OMSI does not run the Center for Tribal Nations, and we do not have decision-making control. We do not have operational or organizational control, but we do help support that potential endeavor. But it's going to be ultimately on the tribal communities to put forth a feasible plan that works within the OMSI district. And I know
Thank
that
you.
was a little roundabout, but it's a very nebulous conversation.
I understand. Thank you very much. Thanks.
And Preston, thank you for being with us and for the presentation. And we
you
appreciate
all.
that. And it'll be fun in the years ahead to watch this sort of evolve, because right now it's fairly flexible, it seems. And so you sort of get to move with the times like the rest of us, and it'll be fun to be partners with you in that and see how it goes.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. And thank you all for taking the time to listen to me and for having this meeting. And I will send out this information, but if anybody has any questions individually, don't hesitate to reach out here at my desk more often than I'd like, and I pick up the phone. So please let us know if you need anything further.